Hi, I'm looking for a camper. My budget is quite low. I've got £1,000 and plan to have 3k altogether. Hi, so I'm Jamie from Ivea Campervans, and I'm here to help you today in this podcast episode on anything campervan related. So what we're going to be doing in this episode is we're going to be answering some of the common questions that get asked within the campervan community, and hopefully that will help you with either making a buying decision when you're buying a campervan, whether you're thinking about using us to do your campervan conversion, or just to answer your questions in general. So I hope you take a load of value from this, and I'm really pleased that you're here with us today. So let's get on to it. The first question I've got here is, hi, I'm looking for a camper. My budget is quite low. I've got £1,000 now and plan to have 3k altogether. Anyone have a park camper or cheap van and even a fully converted van for sale? Question mark. So this has had 119 comments. Now there's probably, and I'm going to be guessing, there's probably a lot of sarcastic comments in there saying you're never going to get a converted van for £3,000. Now I'm here to tell you you can get a converted van for £3,000, but I want to manage your expectations. So what a £3,000 converted camper van is going to look like and what to expect. You're going to get a van that's going to be over 20 years old. It's going to be high mileage. There's possibly going to be have a lot of rust. You're not really going to get something that's off-grid, not from what I've seen. The only time you may get a better van for £3,000 is either if you're buying it off a friend or family, or you've got a motivated seller, to say. So if you've got a motivated seller that needs to sell their van, they're leaving the country, or maybe they're having trouble with the police or something, I don't know, but they're really motivated to sell their van, maybe, possibly, you'll get a fairly good van for £3,000 with a conversion. To give some perspective, if you came to me and said you've got a £3,000 budget to get a van and a conversion, I would answer your question with, it's not possible. To put it into perspective, off-grid electrical system is £3,500. That's just for the electrical system. So we don't have a van, and we haven't even started yet. So that's to give you some sort of perspective. Now, you may think £3,500 is expensive for an off-grid electrical system, but we're using lithium batteries. You know, they're not cheap. We're using DC to DC chargers. That's an alternator charger. We have to use a DC to DC charger, not a split charge relay, which is a cheap thing. You know, we want to use something that's going to protect it. We need to use fuses. We need to use the right cable sizes. The cable that we use, it's about 15 to £20 a meter, depending on what thickness cable you're using. So taking all of those things into consideration, you know, we wouldn't be able to meet that. But that's not to say you can't come to us with that query, because whilst we may not have be able to fulfill that requirement, you will definitely be able to find a van for £3,000, but just don't expect it to be a brand new conversion, you know, have a 15 grand furniture, shower. You know, it's just unrealistic expectations. So I'm not going to read some of the comments in here because they might be quite offensive. So I'll go to the next comment. So the next question in the group, it says, hi chaps, I have a budget of £5,000 looking for a nice camper. What have people got? So same thing as before, £3,000 to £5,000. Is it possible? Yes. Could we convert it? No. And I'd probably be telling you there are other people converting vans that are better suited for that budget, because I wouldn't be happy sending you away in that van with the Ivea branding on it and saying, I've got an Ivea van, and me going, well, hang on a second, as an Ivea van, it's not up to standard. So I would be sending out a substandard product. So just the insulation. So some people in the industry are putting only 50mm recycled wool as insulation. I could do that and it would be an exceptionally cheap alternative to what we do, namely about a couple of £100 versus £1,500 in materials. So when you take that into consideration, in the difference in the price of the insulation, then you've got all the time that we're going to take to prep the van. So I wouldn't want to send out a van and put the Ivea brand on it at that cost, if that makes sense. So hopefully that gives you a better understanding of the market. So we've got a question here. We're looking for a van to have converted into a 3 or 4 berth and belted camper. So I think that means 3 or 4 berth with belted seats. We're looking for a long wheelbase and wanted people's views on which vans are the most reliable and less issues mechanically. We were advised to go for the following: Boxer, Relay or Ducato. Then the higher end ones, Crafter, Sprinter, Man. We figures we would get a younger, yes, that's exactly how it reads. We would get a younger van with less mileage if we went for a Boxer, Relay or Ducato. We know nothing about vans. Please can anyone offer any advice? Thanks. So I think the mechanical question gets raised quite a lot. And it's very hard as a campervan converter for me to answer that because I'm not a mechanic. But having said that, we've travelled for 4 years in a van. We've lived in our van full time, and we had a Ford Transit Mark 7 2.2 engine. I think it was about 200 brake horsepower, or no, it might not have been. It might be 140 brake horsepower. I think I can't remember the brake horsepower, but anyway, it was like driving a car. It was brilliant, absolutely fantastic. Mechanically, did it break down? Yes. Do vans break down? Yes. Which van is going to be the best one? I don't know, is the honest answer, because you could buy a Mercedes Sprinter, and I would say they're probably the best mechanically minded vans. And the reason why I say this, and I've got proof to kind of back this up, is if you go on Auto Trader, so go on Auto Trader or CarWow or any of those websites where you can look at the kind of almost like the whole of market, so to kind of see all the vans that are for sale pretty much across the whole of the UK. Okay, it's not going to give you 100%, but it's going to give you a high percentage of those vans. You go onto the settings or the filters and you search for any vans over £200,000. Sorry, £200,000, over 200,000 miles. And any of those vans over 200,000 miles, what you're going to see is a pattern of good, mechanically sound vans. So that's going to answer the question for you. And typically you will see Mercedes Sprinters at the top of that list. Second would be the VW Crafters. Third would be the Ford Transit. And then you've got your Fiat, your Peugeot, Ducatos. Because there's not many of them over that 200,000. Now it might be different for you on your search when you do your search, but that's going to answer your question for you, because it's going to tell you if a van gets looked after, and that's the important bit. Any van you buy, even a Mercedes Sprinter, if it hasn't been looked after, you could get a lemon. So it's not going to be mechanically sound. So for me to say Mercedes Sprinter is the best van for you to buy mechanically, I might be wrong, because it could be not been serviced very well. It's not been looked after. It's been left by the sea. Like, it's rusty as hell. Like, do you know what I mean? So to answer that question is very, very difficult, really, because like, if it's been looked after, then yes, Mercedes Sprinter. Even if you're buying a Mercedes Sprinter and it hasn't been well looked after, you could end up buying a van that's not going to last. I would have to go and see every single van and then go and test drive them, look at the service history, all the common things that you would look for in a car, you would look for in a van. You would see whether it's had an insurance write-off. Those sorts of things will affect the value. We actually offer a service, so if you wanted, you could call us up. It's a free service at the moment, and we will spend an hour on the phone. You could be sat with a van, you could be looking at a van, you could send us pictures of the van, send us a link of the van, and you might be saying, Jamie, why would you do that? Why would you give an hour of your time? Well, I've seen so many people get burned, ourselves included, that I don't want that to happen to anyone else. So that's me just being open and honest. And if you go away knowing that you've got good advice from us, hopefully one day when you want a camper van converted, you may consider using us in the future, knowing that we gave you some good sound advice when you bought your van. So there is an ulterior motive, but ultimately we just want to help you. If you never came to us ever again as a customer, it doesn't matter. There's no pressure for you to do that, but we just want to help you. So if you are looking at buying a self-converted van and you want a bit of advice, you're looking for tips, yes, go into the groups, ask the questions. You're going to get varied answers. But you know, I have one of my top values is honesty. I'm just going to answer you honestly. I have autism and ADHD, so I'm going to go into detail and I'm going to give you my honest answer. It will be black and white. It might seem quite blunt, you know, but you know, I don't mean any offence by that, but I will answer it as honest as I can. I'm not looking for you to spend money with me. I'm just looking for you not to get ripped off. That's it. That's my ulterior motive. So if we just continue with this question, we figured we'd get a younger van with less mileage if we went Boxer, Relay, Ducato. Now, yes, I would say yes, you will. The Fiat Ducato Boxer and Relay, they are a great van to convert. So if you're asking me which is the best van to convert, I will tell you categorically the Boxer, the Relay and the Ducato are the best van to convert. Why is that? Because it's the lightest van in its class. It's also the largest van in its class, would you believe it? So the cubic capacity in the Boxer, the Relay and the Ducato is identical in the L4H2, which is the category we typically aim our vans at. That has the same, well, that has more space than the L4H2 in the Ford Transit. I don't think it has more space than the L4 in the Sprinter Crafter, because I think that's slightly more space. But the L4 Sprinter Crafter is about 800 800 centimeters longer, so it's like that much longer. Actually, I think it might even be more. So you're not really gaining anything. And the reason why the Fiat Ducato Boxer and Relays, again, are great vans to convert is because they're very wide. So you can have your bed not lengthways in the van, you can have it widthways. So you can have more space in the van as well. So you're gaining in every context. Yes, the Sprinter Crafter is definitely higher. We typically convert the L4H3 Ford Transit. They are very heavy vans, but they're exceptionally high, and they make for great houses on wheels, basically. But yes, to answer that question again, would you get a younger van with less mileage if you went for a Boxer, Relay and Ducato? Yes, because if you went for one of the brand new Mercedes Sprinters, when Mercedes changed their van box, if that makes sense, so the van shell, so the shell of the van to being manufactured individually to VW Crafter, because Mercedes and Crafter used to be identical vans, as in the actual shell of the van. And then Mercedes went off, and then they've now entered more like a real high-end premium market. So for about £70,000, you might get a brand new Mercedes L4H2 van. They're exceptionally expensive. And you could probably buy a brand new Peugeot Boxer Fiat Ducato for maybe 40. You know, I don't know the exact numbers and exact spec or anything like that, but the point is that the Mercedes Sprinters are very expensive vans, and the parts are very expensive. If they're looked after, they will do 500,000 miles. I hope this is okay. I'm due to look at a camper van tonight and can't see that there are any roof vents. Is this a big issue? Yes. Why is that a big issue? Ventilation, ventilation, ventilation. When we breathe, we're breathing out basically hot air, and there's vapor in our breath. When that hits the dew point, and we're not going to go into the technical bits, but when that hits the dew point and hits the cold exterior walls of our van, it will condensate. And what's the best way to eliminate that? Well, most people would say insulation, but I would say ventilation. If all those vapors are coming out and going out the van, they're not condensating on the walls. Does that make sense? If it's damp outside and you've got the vents open, then the cold air is coming into your van and can condensate. But we want to escape all that moisture, humidity. We want to get that out of the van, and that's how we're doing that with the vents. So yes, it is important to have a vent, and that's the reason why. So hopefully that answers that question. But if you've got any more questions, then put it in the comments below. I'd love to see what you think, whether you think I'm actually crazy. And I can tell you, living in a van, there's no chance that we would have lived in a van full time without the roof vents, especially in the hotter countries. It would have been impossible. There's a question here. We're looking for a camper that will sleep for and seat for high top. So I think that's more just they're looking for a van. Is that possible? Absolutely. So like any of those vans I mentioned before would normally fit that category. It's when you go, I would say probably 80% of camper vans and motorhomes are going to fit that category. Actually probably lower percentage now of the self-converted vans, because a lot of the self-converted vans are converted for 2 people. But we here at Ivea, we're trying to build family-friendly vans. So everything we build is with the intention of either having 4 or 5 belted seats. So that's everything that we're trying to do here at Ivea. And you can do that in any L4 model of a van. You can pretty much do that in any L3 model of a van. L2 would be a little bit difficult for space purposes. I'm probably asking the impossible, but I would like a van that has had insulation done, but I don't need much else. I am happy to go basic camping, so no need for electrics or anything built in. I have camping gear, so more than happy to pop my existing stuff in the van. Just as I'm getting older, I'm struggling with tents. I'm on a tight budget, and as I already have a car for daily stuff, road tax and insurance on a van for camping is something I need to keep as cheap as possible. Be honest, will I find anything that would work? Yes, absolutely. There are, I mean, you could basically buy any van, any ply-lined van, and all I would do is take the ply lining off, insulate it. Again, like I say, it's about £1,500 for all the insulation materials and materials you'd need to insulate it properly. But to do that, I would also recommend putting in at least one roof light, and they're about a couple of £100, and it's a jigsaw. So you cut it with a jigsaw. The glue is about £10, so it's not a lot to actually do what they're talking about. So that is absolutely possible. Would somebody have that already available on the marketplace? Yes. There are people selling part converted vans, and actually there's more part converted vans on the market now than I've ever seen in as many years as we've been doing this. So that's yeah, that's definitely possible. Let's have a look. Okay, we've got another one here. Honestly, people, big dream of mine, this camper van. Me and the missus go wild camping a lot and want to join the club. However, I have 15k and really struggling to find something nice. I would prefer a Ford Custom 19 plate and upwards. Yeah, that's not realistic, really. If you want the Ford Custom, unfortunately, the Ford Customs, the Ford Transit, not Ford Transit, the VW Transporters, and those smaller vans, because they're so versatile. And what I mean by versatile is you could use it as your everyday vehicle. Yeah, okay, you're going to get less miles to the gallon and stuff like that, but you could use it as your everyday vehicle. It's small enough to go under most barriers, so you haven't got the problem of pulling up at a beach, not being able to park your van just because you're in a van, and the barrier's too low. Maybe you go to the football and you're turning up to football, or maybe you turn up at a car park. I mean, we've turned up at an Ivea of all the places, and it had a barrier. We couldn't go into Ivea to go and buy some units. So that category of vehicle is, people are asking crazy money. Like I had somebody the other day with a transporter wanting more than £30,000, and the van was over 15 years old. And I'm like, you've got basically a van, or an MPV, really, a multi-person vehicle with a pop top, a very basic kitchen, a few batteries and a few lights, and maybe a diesel heater. Like, it's nothing complex, and they're wanting absolutely crazy money. It is something we're looking at doing, but you know, at £15,000 and it being a 19 plate is going to be very, very difficult to achieve that, especially if you want a pop top roof. Because a pop top roof, for a quality one, and a really, really good quality one, which is important considering, you know, if you're driving along, you know, you've got a really poor quality one. Let's say the struts fail, or something fails in the locking mechanism for the lid. You're driving along, there goes your pop top, rips off your roof, you're done. Or the material inside the pop top. So inside your pop top, you've got this tent material. If that's really cheap and nasty, it isn't going to last very long. So you're going to have to replace it. And some of the cheaper pop tops, they make it so you can't replace it. So you'd have to replace your whole pop top. So it's not worth it. So buy a very, very good quality. I can't remember the name of the brand that do the real high quality ones. They've got like a zip seal, so you could replace the tent part of the pop top. That's really handy, having that as an option, because you know, they're a tent and they will eventually kind of perish. Do you know what I mean? Like, they might have a 5-year life cycle, but if you see those tent boxes in is it Decathlon, they have, I think it's a 12-month guarantee. Don't quote me on that. I'll have to be careful what I say, but I think it's a 12-month guarantee. But basically what that's saying is, if you use that constantly for a year and went and did van life, you'd probably be coming back and needing to buy a new one. So you're spending a lot of money on a tent to put on your roof, when you could buy a cheaper tent and just put it on the floor. It's that easier. Yes, you could, with putting everything on the roof, everything's there, and it's got that convenience factor, but essentially it's a tent that's on your roof. So, you know, but with that 15k budget in mind, you know, you'd have to look for a van. Could you get that van under 15k? Yes. You have to be careful of the wet belts as well. Not so much in those smaller vans, because, well, I say you still need to do the wet belt service, but not so much in the smaller vans, because you're not putting as much strain on the engine. So they're less likely to go than the bigger vans, like the Ford Transits, especially the extra long wheelbase. So that's why we recommend, if you're buying a Ford Transit, try and stick to the 2.2 engine. And if you're buying a Ford Transit Custom, again, stick to that 2.2 engine, because that will be typically the chain driven engine, not the wet belt version. So that's additional cost there. So that's absolutely, is it possible to get one for 15k? Yes. Is it unrealistic? Yes, I think it is a big dream. He's a bit of a dreamer. Could he get something? Yes. You know, there's people in the comments. You've got 33 comments here, so it's definitely possible. So I think I'll end the podcast there. I'm very, very grateful if you've got this far in the without turning off or switching off. We're going to try and put the questions in a document or something, so you can maybe jump to this part of the podcast. So if you're looking for answers on those sorts of things, to try and help you navigate, you know, this, it's very troublesome. There are a lot of people out there that are trying to sell self-converted vans for 25, 30, 40, 50, 60,000 pounds, and people are getting ripped off, because if you actually look underneath the core of what they're selling, it's not very good quality. And what we're trying to do, again, with this video series and this podcast, is we're trying to give you as much information as we can to help you make an informed decision. So thank you for joining me. I hope you have an amazing day, and I hope you start your adventure travel soon. And like I say, if you need any help creating your dream home on wheels, then come and look us up at ivea.co.uk. Give us a call. We'd love to have a chat, see whether we can help you. Even if we're not the right fit for you, we'll point you in the right direction and try and help you. Have an amazing day. Take care. Bye-bye.